Dear listeners, welcome to the Deep Journal channel. By subscribing to our channel, you can be informed about detailed reports every time. The long-standing frictions and conflicts between the US and Iran continue in the Persian Gulf. While the main source of tension in the region between Iran and the USA was both oil and maritime trade and Iran's uncontrolled nuclear activities, the two countries threatened each other's navies many times and attempted to attack. In particular, the USS Essex attack of an Iranian military helicopter, shared with a new video today, fell like a bomb on the agenda. The Iranian government presented the images of the attack, which was carried out in retaliation to the events that took place in the last days, to the foreign press. Also, in the conflicts between Iran and Israel, we will soon examine in detail the allegations of Mossad sabotage against Iran, mysterious explosions at nuclear facilities, sanctions against Iran and Israel's measures against China's relationship with Iran, and more. In the spring of 2020, the Great Tension, when the USA and Iran came to the brink of war and the attack order was cancelled minutes before, took the stage once again in the Persian Gulf. Iran's Revolutionary Guards announced that it blocked an effort by the United States to seize an oil tanker bound for Iran in the Arabian Sea on October 25. According to the statement of the Tehran administration, Iranian soldiers landed on the deck of the tanker and took control. The tanker was diverted and returned to Iranian waters. But according to the U.S. military, the situation is not as Iran describes it. The Pentagon reported that the U.S. Navy was at the scene when Iranian troops seized a Vietnam-flagged oil tanker. Also, according to U.S. officials speaking to the international media, dozens of Iranian drones approached the American ship Essex in the Strait of Hormuz in a position to attack for a week. The Iranian media, on the other hand, published the footage of the incident in which the US and Iranian forces faced each other on October 25. The video recording opens with footage of Iranian soldiers descending from a helicopter to a tanker. While it was seen that the Iranian helicopter was aimed at the US warship many times, it was argued that many U.S. helicopters and warships came to the scene in the news in the media. Noting that the efforts of the U.S. could not prevent the rescue of the tanker, the Iranian media claimed that the attempt by helicopters and warships to block the route had also failed. Similar scenes occurred in the event that took place today. An Iranian military helicopter attacked the USS Essex. It is also reported that the helicopter locked on the target and made several harassment attacks. These news were not first published in the Iranian media and were served to the foreign press. The reason for this is thought to be such a move made by Iran to measure the pulse. It is reported that these moves of Iran were carried out due to not returning to the nuclear agreements, which it entered in 2015 and exited with Trump's sanctions in 2018. Especially recently, with the pressures of the USA and Israel on Iran in the region, Iran's aggressive attitude has started to increase. Iran is deploying hundreds of tank shipments, new air defense systems and thousands of militants to southern Syria, and has also established a large war fleet in the Persian Gulf and the Oman Sea. However, if there is no solution to the recently increasing Iranian nuclear threat, according to the reports of Mossad, Iran will complete its nuclear weapons in the very near future. Considering these developments, it is believed that the key to Tehran passes through Beijing. After the recent talks between the USA and China, the Israeli president's meeting with the Chinese President Xi means that Iran will be cut off from its allies one by one. Let's now examine the details of Iran's helicopter attack and the reports on what could happen as a result of Iran's nuclear developments and how this issue can be resolved, as well as the measures taken by Israel against Iran-China relations. A recent video lasting 42 seconds shows an Iranian helicopter flying with an attack position close to a U.S. ship. Reports emerged online on Saturday that an Iranian military helicopter allegedly flew with an attack position close to the USS Essex, days after reports said the USS Essex and the British Royal Navy Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier had conducted an interoperability training. The Essex is a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship. It was supposedly in the Gulf of Oman in recent days, and has elements of the 11 Marine Expeditionary Unit on board, according to the earlier reports. The Essex is part of the Amphibious Ready Group, which has 3 ships, according to USNI News: a landing helicopter dock USS Essex, LHD-2, amphibious transport dock USS Portland, LPD-27, an amphibious dock landing ship USS Pearl Harbor, LSD-52. The Portland is in the Red Sea for training that took place recently with Israel and Gulf partners. According to the reports, there are MV-22B Ospreys on the Essex, part of the Marine Medium Tiltrotor Squadron, VMM 165. Essex has been in the area since August when it deployed to Bahrain. The recent video lasts 42 seconds and is shot from the cockpit of the alleged Iranian helicopter. It comes close to the U.S. ship, and helicopters can be seen on the deck. Last week, reports said the Essex was apparently involved in an incident in which Iranian drones approached the ship. Additionally, Iran also accused the U.S. of piracy, and claimed the U.S. Navy tried to detain a ship carrying Iranian oil. Iranian helicopter-borne commandos then seized the Vietnamese-owned oil tanker and took the oil. The video of the attack helicopter buzzing the ship came from Telegram, but Iranian media seems to be downplaying the incident. The incident wasn't mentioned on Fars News on Saturday, and Tasnim only mentioned it by noting that Zionist media were reporting the story. This leaves questions about the incident and what the messaging behind it might be. U.S.-Israel partnerships and joint training appear to be at an all-time high. There was blue flag last month with 8 air forces gathered in Israel, the visit of the UAE Air Force commander to Israel, a joint training with the U.S. Marines, and a joint naval drill in the Red Sea with the UAE and Bahrain. There have been more U.S. strategic bombers in the region as well. EKN B-1 bombers overflew Israel on October 30 with an IDF escort. For the second time in a month, the B-1s were escorted late last week. Iran's Tasnim News reported that foreign reports have discussed the helicopter incident, saying that, the report goes on to say that the Iranian pilot portrayed and documented his presence on board the USS Essex aircraft carrier in front of the eyes of the U.S. military from inside his cabin. Tasnim says, these unusual images come as Iran conducts large-scale exercises in the northern Indian Ocean and parts of the Red Sea. Iran references it Dufakar 1400 joint exercise. So why was Iranian media hesitant to jump on this story? Last week, Iran appears to have invented a story about an incident with the U.S. Navy, claiming it was able to abscond with a ship under the nose of Fifth Fleet. Now Iran isn't talking. So why isn't it bragging? This isn't the first time Iranian IRGC fast boats or drones or other Iranian military assets have harassed the U.S. Navy. The U.S. fired warning shots in April and May at Iranian IRGC naval ships. The U.S. has warned of unprofessional incidents like this. It's possible that Iran leaked this video to see how Israel and other media might react. If Iran is downplaying it at first, that means it is thinking to gauge U.S. reactions. This contrasts other times that Iran seeks to take credit for incidents. Since 2019, Iran has increased tensions with the U.S. It has mined ships and launched increased drone attacks, and it has been striking at Saudi Arabia, U.S. facilities in Iraq and Syria, and aiding the Houthis in Yemen. Iran also used a drone to attack a commercial ship in July in the Gulf of Oman. Iran's Savaz spy ship was damaged in April in the Red Sea. Iran has attacked commercial vessels over the last 8 months, apparently thinking it is targeting Israel-linked ships. Now, let's examine the striking developments about Iran, Mossad, explosions, sanctions and China and the latest developments about Iran in 3 conclusions. So much news is happening involving Iran that it can be hard to make sense of it. Below are 3 key takeaways to frame the latest major developments. 1. Iranian nuclear advancement. How does Iran continue to break records in enriched uranium quantities and volume of advanced centrifuges for enriching uranium if the Mossad, allegedly, blew up its nuclear facilities 3 times between July last year and June this year? Institute for Science and International Security President David Albright said, "It looks like Iran rebuilt Karaj quickly, and it may have used some centrifuge parts produced prior to the attack. But the rate of production may be lower than expected, based on Iran's stated plans." Albright said that unfortunately, in the end, the attacks could not stop centrifuge production completely, only slow it down for some period of time. The ICAC was capable of building thousands of advanced centrifuges per year. Now Iran appears able to make many hundreds per year. Moreover, he said, inevitably, Iran will rebuild, so future increases should be expected, absent more attacks or negotiated limits. Next, Albright Said. Iran had nearly 2,000 advanced centrifuges deployed at Natanz and Fordow as of September 2021. Based on Iran's declared plans to the IAEA and the requirements of the nuclear law, we have projected the total could increase to over 3,000 by early 2022. We will soon learn how many advanced centrifuges are now deployed, at which point we can update our projection. The newly reported rate of 170 advanced centrifuges produced over a few months is not that high, compared to Iran's stated plans. We still need to learn the increase in number, deployed since September, however. He added that Iran's actions are very concerning, since production at Karaj and elsewhere is in secret, and some centrifuges could be hidden or diverted to a clandestine facility. 2. Partial sanctions relief even before the November 29 meeting. Did the US quietly already give Iran some significant partial sanctions relief simply to get it to return to the negotiating table on November 29? No one knows the full answer to this, but on Friday, a tweet published by Ali Nadiri, the managing director of Iran's Islamic Republic news agency, IRNA, said that over $3.5 billion of Iran's blocked resources had been released by one of the countries holding them. Nadiri added that a significant portion of the now unblocked resources were entering Iran's trade cycle. The IRNA CEO did not specify which country had released the resources, and no one else has given specifics, with the US notably not responding at all. In a similar vein, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi announced on Tuesday that Iran now has access to its resources in other countries, according to the Fars news agency. In the beginning, the government had problems with selling oil, but now the situation has improved, and I can only say that the government has access to its resources in other countries, said Raisi. Of course, the whole thing could be fake news spin to justify to its domestic-based concessions, which Iran may be contemplating as part of the November 29 nuclear talks. If true, there is some speculation that the country referred to by Nadiri is South Korea, which has been one of the countries holding the largest amount of frozen Iranian assets. Also, there might have been some kind of long-term deal reached in April when the Islamic Republic released a South Korean ship's captain. Maybe South Korea said, "Release our captain," and months later, when no one is watching, we will quietly release the funds, or some of the funds, since $3.5 billion would only be part. The big question then would be whether the US was involved in giving a quiet green light. If it was, then Washington has already started to make partial sanctions relief concessions before the November 29 talks even start. If that is true, the Biden administration would look like it is far more desperate to cut a deal, even one worse than the 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal, than the patient face it is presenting in public. 3. The key to Tehran is through Beijing. Can Iran be reined in if the US and China reach a broader understanding of trade-offs in which Chinese President Xi Jinping moves toward America on the Iranian nuclear issue, while US President Joe Biden concedes something else which Beijing cares about more? Or will continued shakiness in this relationship doom any attempt to isolate the Islamic Republic diplomatically? On Tuesday, a US official said that Biden and Jinping talked at their virtual summit about how they might harmonize their positions ahead of the November 29 talks. The two presidents had the chance to talk about how we can align our perspectives heading into that November 29 meeting so that the P5+1 is united in dealing with Iran and trying to pave the way for a return to the deal. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said in a virtual think tank appearance. One such concession could be if Washington said something positive for China on the Taiwan issue. Biden has lowered his profile in terms of Taiwanese independence. All of this would seem optimistic from an Israeli perspective, except that none of it is coming from China, so it may just be more wishful US thinking that has moved Beijing very little. Unfortunately, it is more likely that the US-China rivalry will continue and Beijing will continue to be Iran's economic lifeline around US sanctions.